I'm not taking back anything that I've said about the Israel-Gaza conflict. I'm not on anyone's side. I can just see both sides of it. Now, it's like I don't think there's been any nuance. I don't think anyone's really thought about it. I think, to be honest, I think I'm the only person who understands it. So it's like I have to hold my position as to I look at it like this. You get guys out in the world who I agree with on 9 out of 10 things, like George Galloway, like even like Jimmy Dore, like Glenn Greenwald, right? Those are men of the left, proud men of the old left, not the woke left, not the insane identity politics. It's like we don't know each other, but we have solidarity for each other. And if you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us. Therefore, I'm outraged. That gang, I don't think there's any future in those people. I think they'll just burn themselves out with rage. And they'll always, there's kind of people who always find someone to blame, always find an excuse. If you search the world looking to be outraged, you're going to be outraged because the world is a very cruel place. A very cruel place. And it's like if you want to see atrocity, you'll find atrocity. But it's like I've spoken in the past, you can go back over my stuff, and there was a time, not so long ago, before Biden got elected, where I'm like, peace might be at hand here. It's like there's a way out of this. There's a way out of this ancient struggle, this bag of shit we've been given to hold as humanity, which is this conflict that began long before any of us were really born. Right? It's like you can chart it all the way back to World War One, how things have ended up the way they've ended up, and it's like the powers in the world have changed over and over again, and this Israeli Arab problems always remained, and the pieces and the players around them have continuously changed. And I take it back to like World War One. Although I'll for the reasons of brevity, I'll take it back to the Suez Crisis. I'll take it back to NASA. I mean, it's like George Galloway sees NASA as a hero, and I'm like, no, he didn't help anybody. Didn't help anybody obtaining all those weapons from the Russians. The Russians saw the Arab-Israeli situation as a way of opening a new theatre of the Cold War. There's no way I can get past that as to whether they've gone in there and deliberately tried to cause as much trouble as possible and destabilise the region for their own reasons. It's like if you start trouble in that region, that's where the shipping lanes are. You've got like the world of capitalism by the balls. So anything that flares up in that region is going to have a global significance. It's going to add a few pence onto the price of a gallon of petrol at least. It's going to have that kind of impact, and if the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to get. So this is a messy sort of situation, and you get those who've decided to pick a side. Like, I understand the position of both sides. I understand that the Israelis can make a case as to say they've, in their way, done their best, and there's been this endless change of guard that have dealt with these problems, dealt with these wars. You've got neighbours that were once hostile have now become friendly to Israel, and you've got the opposite, once friendly, now hostile. So it's like the powers keep changing. And there's things to understand, like, in reality, it's like Britain's really no friend of Israel, and neither is the United States. To win votes, yeah, but to them it's a lot about business, and this be a problem with Israel as well. It's a matter of I'm like friends with Sam Vaknin. Now, Sam, he's an Israeli. He's like currently in Tel Aviv. His sister's in the IDF. And he tells a different side of this. He tells a different story. The way he sees it, and he's quite a thinker, Sam. The way he sees it is, it's in no one's interest for this to ever end. It's like the army's providing a lot of jobs and a lot of business for like contractors, suppliers. It's like, why would they ever want it to end? It's like they've got themselves like a successful now military industrial complex of their own in Israel. They build their own gear. They are cutting edge technology as well. And it's like they've done that in partnership with corporations, not nations, corporations, private corporations. So it's like Israel are in bed with Raytheon. What do Raytheon do? Oh, well, they make missiles. They made planes once. And well, basically, they're an offshoot of the Baker Hughes oil business. Baker Hughes Oil, that's, they make all the drill heads in the world for oil drilling. They make them all. Whether you're in Iran, if you're in Iran, you're using Baker Hughes drill bits. Baker Hughes then becomes Hughes Aircraft. Hughes Aircraft then become Raytheon. They go from planes to missiles, and they are business partners of Israel. It's not that the US are allies of Israel. Raytheon are, and they're a private company, and it's a matter of, think of this. Every time one of those interceptor missiles, I put it this way. Every time one of those interceptor missiles is launched, a fax automatically is generated in the sales office at Raytheon placing an order for a replacement. So it's like, there are those who make money out of this. That'd be Sam's angle. And then he's like, on the other side of it, it's like Hamas have got like power. It's like they don't live in Gaza. It's like there are Palestinian billionaires. Go and look it up. There are Palestinian billionaires in the world. Truly. Go and look it up. And it's like they've got no interest in this coming to an end either. This struggle keeps them in power. The place is maybe a little chaotic, but it's like there is positions in government. There's obviously, you can be mayor, you can be councillor, you can be MP, and it's like they're not interested in giving up power. They're not. They like to stay in power. So it's like it could be seen to be a deal that's done. Say this is Sam, so he understands it, and it's like, you got a point, Sam. It's like, is it in anyone's interest for this war to end? Because everyone's making money. The poor people at the bottom who have got a pretty poor lot in life, it's like, well, people in Rochdale have got a poor lot in life and they don't listen to us. So it's a matter of, they're stuck in the middle, they're stuck with what they get. And it's a matter of those above them with power have got absolutely no intention of turning this Cold War, as it would be then. I mean, now it's just a red hot war, it's just war. But they've got no interest in turning it off. Sam is he doesn't like the Israeli government. He's like, this is a mess. But he's an Israeli. And it's like, it's his homeland. He's an Israeli citizen. He's currently there. He's in Israel. He's in Tel Aviv. So it's like, he's quite a brilliant historian, Sam. He's taught me things, not from just talking to him, but his videos on the subject of Israel and Jews are. He's in his way a genius. What's the IQ of Sam? An IQ of about 160, 170. It's like he's one of the, by that measure, Sam's one of the smartest people in the world, and I communicate with him quite often. We discuss my health problems because he has health problems of his own, and it's a matter of we talk about that, and we exchange words, and it's like he's a friend of mine. I like him. It's like there'd be those and say, well, he's a psychopath, isn't he? A narcissist. I'm like, yes, and it's like, so's my dad. It's like I can get on quite well with people who would generally be seen as being either dangerous or manipulative or psychotic. It's like, well, it's like I'm from Rochdale. It's like there's a lot of people around here like that. It's not an uncommon thing, and we all have to live. We all have to get on with life. You can learn something from somebody who's a lot different from you. So I have this situation where I have an understanding of it from one side and then an understanding of another. And the understanding I have of the other side is like I've gained it in the past from people like George Galloway. And it could be said, right? It could be said that both sides had a case. They had a moral imperative. Both sides could say they were hand on heart fighting the good fight. And then that October the 7th happened. And then it's like, okay, so these people who've been fighting, let's say, or their activism's been driven towards a solution for this conflict to free Palestine. I feel that Hamas betrayed them all and then gave them, to use my language, a bag of shit to hold, a shit test. It's like, do you either stick with us and double down and say, they had it coming? And I'm like, that's an atrocity. There's no one in the world who could justify the actions of October the 7th. And this has unleashed more bad blood, because this is a part of the way I see the world, as to who've you upset, who've you pissed off, whose relatives have you killed. Right? That's bad blood. It's like, that's like the language of vendetta. And it's like, this was very much in the minds of those who planned the October the 7th attack. They wanted to create the biggest atrocity in the world. They wanted it to, in essence, baited Israel to hit them as hard as they could. And Israel immediately reached for the old book. Decided to invoke the old God, and I'm like, this is what happens. And it's a matter of, my opinion was that the activists outside of the situation, people in the West, people like George, they'd been betrayed, and I felt sorry for them, and I still do. It's like, you've been put in an indefensible position, but you've got a legacy of having fought for the rights of these people, and Hamas have put those people in an incredible amount of danger, because there's an angle to it, as to say, the old God, the God of the Old Testament, will rain down fire and brimstone. And Israel immediately reached for that language, and the bad blood was up, and they're absolutely furious. So they're not thinking anymore, and they've immediately jumped in with both feet. You got Peter Hitchens, who had I don't agree with on this one. I like Hitch. I've been reading his books recently. He's a clever guy, thoughtful, but he was saying Israel shouldn't have counterattacked. They had a chance to let Hamas just stand there on their own. What have you done? This is forget 50 years. This is new. You've done something new. Once where it could be said that you had a moral imperative to fight the fight you were fighting. Same can't be said now. Who can justify what they did to those civilians? People like me, people like you, who died for the crime of being Jews. In the same way as Palestinians in the past have said, they died for the crime of being Palestinians. And it's like, well, it could be true. It's like, but there's a thing that gets, when innocents go down, there's an old saying that used to get said around here. When you hang around with crows, don't be too surprised when people throw stones. I haven't heard it for a while, but it was something that grandparents of mine would say, and it's a matter of, you put yourself in the company of dangerous people. Don't be surprised when you get dragged into their shit. Now, the Palestinian people didn't really have a choice, but that's the way it works. And you'll never be able to change that. It's just part of the way that the world works. So it's like Hamas could be said to have put the civilians of Palestine in deadly peril. And then it'd be a matter of the only answer that the Israelis have got for this, because their people are demanding blood. They want blood. They want blood for blood. And it's like, you'll not easily switch that off. And it's a matter of, they're going to push now, they're going to squeeze, and they're going to squeeze, and they're going to squeeze. And if you don't want to face your home being turned into a bag of shit, smashed to pieces, and your people butchered, I suggest you surrender. Surrender. It's like see, peace always comes one way or another. War will always end. Always. And it's a matter of, there's been mistakes made in the world, right? Ukraine should have surrendered. Going to war with Russia was a grave mistake. Who was at risk? Well, maybe some of the people in positions of power in the country of Ukraine might not have had power anymore and may have been, say, forced into exile. Not so many of them, though, forced into exile. There'd have probably been very few gone to prison, very few gone on trial. They'd have been forced into exile. They should have surrendered. They should have surrendered, because it's a choice between, okay, in fact, we'll forget, right? We'll forget the whole Donbass thing and that it's been going on since 2014, right? It's like, okay, how's the war gone for Ukraine 2 years later? How's it gone for them? I've heard it said that they've lost hundreds of thousands of young men, soldiers, most of them blown to pieces by high explosive, because with the invention of drones, the weapons of World War One, the gun, has become the ultimate weapon on the battlefield. Now we've got drone spotters. Accurate artillery strikes are just absolutely deadly, high explosives. So you've got people dying much in the same way as they died in World War One. And it'd be disgusting and terrifying to have been the ones who survived that high explosive blast, where all your mates have been blown to pieces and you've lost your legs, and you might be lying there for 2 to 3 days before somebody comes along looking for survivors and finding them. And it'd be like, this is like World War One. This is an absolute nightmare that's been unleashed on these poor bastards who've been sent to fight. And it'd be, to me, that's, before you go to war, you've got to think about what it entails. And I don't believe that the Ukrainians thought for a minute about the cost. They were all about national pride, and all these dicks who still support that war, they're all on about that. You can't let a tyrant do that. It's like, tell the 300,000 or so guys who've been blown to pieces, tell them that. To my mind, the Russian invasion thing, right, came about because of just, you're trying to negotiate with a rocking horse, aren't you? When the US sent Kamala Harris over to negotiate, I'm like, this isn't looking good. This is looking a bit poor, this, because she doesn't know anything about anything. And she's going to go and she's going to run her mouth. It's like, this war need not happen. And it's like the costing lives, the damage done to the country, the damage done to its people, the population of the country scattered to the four winds isn't worth it. It isn't worth a load of fucking idiots who are, in essence, liars being deposed in Ukraine, being removed from power. It wasn't worth it. The price was never worth it. And from the start, I was saying that. I was surprised when Russia invaded, but hey, once they'd invaded, once they'd decided, it's like, here, I was saying this, I'm like, you're up against an artillery army. We've seen how they went to war in Chechnya. They are just like any other army. They are not interested in taking a lot of casualties. So they're going to engage you at long range, and their air defences are deadly. And they don't have to cross an ocean to put troops on the ground. They just have to drive down a road. It's like, this is a bad war. This is going to get ugly quick. And I was completely right about how it's turned out in Ukraine. It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth destroying a country and a nation and a people. It wasn't worth it. They shouldn't have done it. It wasn't worth it. There was other ways that it could be dealt with, and it's a failure in human imagination that led to the Ukraine war. And then it's like, so I'm 100% square behind, with the same angle as Mr. Galloway. We would agree 100% completely on the Ukraine war being a ridiculous mistake, a tragic and just unspeakable horror that's been delivered onto those who are still in the game, those who survived. Those who are dead, we can mourn the dead, but those who live, who've been maimed by that war, doctors and nurses of the world are going to be looking after those people for the rest of their lives. That country is going to be littered with battlefield souvenirs. That's a Manic Street preacher's line, isn't it? Man in a wheelchair with no legs. Poor bastard who's had half his head blown away but still lives. That's going to be things. That's going to be a feature. It's like when I was a kid, growing up Syke in Rochdale, there used to be a guy who lived on the front from me, who'd had his face blown off in World War One, blown off, and his eyes, his face was like bowed inwards. And he had no lips, and he had no teeth, and he had two holes where his nose once were, and he had these sort of eyes that were just like hanging out, and he was a horror sight for everyone who ever saw him. It was like, whoa, my word, whoa! It would take you back as to where he was a battlefield souvenir, wasn't he? It's like I used to see that guy out doing his garden, and it was like his face had been sliced off. As a little kid, I saw him. It's like, oh, frightening. And it'd be, what happened to him? He got his face blown off in World War One. He lost his face in World War One. I've seen it. And it's like, Ukraine's going to be that place where people see sights like that. And it'd be one of sympathy and one of horror, but there's nothing anyone can do. No words of sympathy are going to balm what he has to live with, are they? It's like difficult to know how to behave around a person who's so afflicted. It is. It's uncomfortable. Whether you like it or not, it's uncomfortable. And that's something now that, these wars are going to leave a legacy of that. Battlefield souvenirs. So it was my opinion, and take it right back from the start, because nobody else had said it. I'm the only one saying it. You've got people saying it now, months and months later. Hamas ought to surrender. I'm like, if Hamas really cared for the people, they would have surrendered. As soon as it got to where it's like the Israelis are not playing games here, and they're gonna smash the place to pieces, and they're gonna kill a lot of people. And the people who they're gonna kill, they didn't ask for this. They're not guilty, but they're gonna get it until you surrender. I'm like, the only way that this isn't going to be a bloodbath. I mean, look at it now, where it's like the war's moved all the way south. They've cleared out Gaza City, and now it's Rafah. And it's like, as Mr. Galloway said recently, rats trapped in a cage. And it's like, you chose this. The Israelis, and I say from the it's like, the Israelis have called upon the old God. The old God ain't got a problem wiping out a city of people. I'm sorry, you guys who seem to think that God is all love and roses. But no. That inhuman nature that is God. It needs to be. He's genocidal, murderous, vengeful. And it's like, Hamas knew what they were doing when they unleashed that. They seemed to think they could benefit. They seem to think they could benefit, and it's a matter of they've done something unseemly that no one's going to stand behind. Have you noticed how the war hasn't escalated, and you're seeing, they had a bit of fun, a few rockets fired in by Hezbollah, people sort of joining in, Houthis are firing rockets at ships, and it's like it's not gone full escalation though, has it? Why? You think any sort of religious leader, because that's what it would require. It would require all the mullahs to call the whole world to jihad. Hasn't happened. It's happened in a few pockets, but it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened the way that Hamas hoped it would. Why? Because no one would follow up the massacre of October 7th with an endorsement and an invasion. Nobody. It's unseemly. Like it or not, whatever you think about Muslims, right? They are under God too. They have conscience. How many of these sorts of high-end, powerful mullahs, clerics in that part of the world, how many of them came out saying, the fuse has been lit, let's all take our chance, let's all jump into war? None of them. None of them. It's not happened. Why? Because what would that make you? It's rather unseemly, isn't it? The murder, rape and mutilation of men, women and children. Who's going to say, I stand by that? So it's like those who ostensibly fight for the Palestinians in the court of public opinion were betrayed by Hamas. They were almost put in an indefensible position. And then it's a matter of, well, do we, and then they've split it. They've like, do we double down or do we split? Most of them have chosen to double down. So it's like, when it gets to that, it's like, I'm straight up rational, pragmatic. I'm like, right, okay, do you want the place levelling and a lot of people to die? Oh, well, no. Well, surrender then. Surrender. That's where I stand on it. Hamas should have surrendered. The world should have called for Hamas's surrender straight away. It's like, right, enough's enough. Spare the people. Hamas surrender. Unconditionally. The leaders who are camped out in 5-star hotels in Qatar, give yourselves up. Stand trial for an atrocity. And then be able to say, okay, what we did was bad, but you understand why we did it, don't you? And it'd be a matter of, yes, but it was despicable. You deserve to pay. And it end there. It actually end there. That'd be your peaceful resolution. Could have happened months ago. It's like, as soon as, the other nations of the Middle East didn't immediately jump in and go to war, it's a matter of, this has backfired. God is not on our side anymore in view of what we did. That's the point I make. Could be said that I care for Palestinians more than those who are making a lot of noise about it. Why? Because I'd have seen them unharmed if I could. I'd have separated the wheat from the chaff. Like, you're innocent, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve the life you've been given. Can we maybe make that better? Before, Trump got thrown out and Biden got in, and suddenly everyone in the world's got an incentive to think, hey, you know what? Do you know what Biden is? Because they know you do nothing. You can do what we want. We can take the piss. We can do what we want because we know that old fool will do nothing. Joe Biden's made a career for himself and a hell of a lot of money out of being someone who takes bribes to do nothing. Takes bribes to do nothing. I knew that. Sticks Hexenhammer knows that. And so does everybody else. It's like, if I had power, would know I've got Biden in my pocket. And so did everyone else. See, Biden's weakness has given Hamas almost a green light as to say, well, the Americans are not going to get involved, are they? And they haven't. Have the Americans made... they've not done anything at all. They've... and it's a matter of... it's a shit situation. It's a bag of shit. So it's a matter of... The US could have said, right, Raytheon, don't replenish their weapons. Don't replenish Israel's defensive weapons. How would that look? When rockets start raining down on Israel and they've got the means to strike back, you should be lucky, you should be counting your blessings out there, you fellas, that Israel don't really have nuclear arms. I think that's one of the greatest intelligence coups of all time, convincing the world they did. And all they had to do was find themselves one patsy, give him some photographs, and then all they had to do was trick the Guardian. Have you seen what the Guardian is? Guardian exclusive, Israel's nuclear arsenal. It's like Israel had all the benefit of half the world believing they had a nuclear arsenal. And nobody drops nuclear weapons on. They're a deterrent and they're a threat. It's a lot cheaper to brainwash one fool. Give him some information. Take him on a bit of a tour. Trick him. Give him some photographs that could have been taken in any country in the world. And then to the Guardian. And it's a matter of... what happened to Mordecai Vanunu? Oh, he was someone who had a bit of a taste for prostitutes. Excuse me? Yeah. They honey-trapped him. Honey-trapped him. What was he doing when he got to London and he was banged up in an hotel room? Oh, he was going through the small-ad classifieds in the local newspaper trying to find women who'd visit him. So the Israelis sent him one and they kidnapped him back with a honey trap. That's what happened to Mordecai Vanunu, and he goes back and he gets put in prison in Israel. And the world's given this bag of shit to hold, where the Guardian have exposed it to the world that Israel have got a nuclear arsenal. And then those who've got it in them to understand that the Israelis are evil, right, they can't help but believe it. So to my mind, that's like tradecraft, spycraft. It's like you're dealing with people who are one step ahead and a lot smarter than you might think they are, and even more ruthless. It's like there are those in the world who would say that Israel are a wicked nation, right? Straight up, wicked, right? And you provoke them to the nth degree, and then when they come crashing down on you and start to kill thousands of people, you're surprised by that? To my mind, it's a complicated situation, and to my mind, it doesn't, in that way, compute as to where you can separate the good side from the bad. And if we were to talk about moral imperative, i.e. the releasing of bad blood, Israel got the moral imperative to go on a war of destruction. The moral imperative that people would demand it. An Israeli government won't last an hour that said, no, we're going to exercise restraint here. Yeah, but they're shelling us, they're firing rockets at us. And it's like, I've heard there's a thing where a thing in the past that I've disagreed with Galloway with. The rockets sent out of Gaza, the rockets fired randomly into Israel. And I'm like, that's really bad. It's like a random death from the sky. You're watching television, next thing you know, your house has been blown apart by a rocket. It's like, who'd stand for that? Who? We wouldn't stand for it. You see how we went to town on the Irish, and there's something, this isn't the first time for me trying to compute something like that. It's like, I was groomed from a young age to be an IRA sympathiser. Groomed. By whom? Family. Relatives. Family. People in my town. This town was, if people say that this town has got, say, a large Asian and Pakistani population, you want to see the size of the Irish population that it once had. I'm a kid who was beaten for being a Catholic. Beaten for being a Catholic. And then radicalised by teachers. It's like I had the lucky distinction of having a teacher educate me between the age of 11 and 16 who was a political activist, an IRA sympathiser, whose husband was an MP. So it's like, I know something of this. They forget it, don't they? They forget the sectarian situation. There was every bit as bitter. It was disgraceful. Saying that, I'm like, blood and bone Protestant and was raised Catholic. I'm a Collins of Cork, and my great-grandfather was a black and tan. I get this. It's like, what? Like, your ancestors would be deadly enemies. Yeah. My ancestors likely bloody fired bloody martyrs at each other. I get it. It's like there's always a choice to turn it off. And sometimes the choice to turn it off and save the people. I mean, politicians go to war. Governments go to war. Hamas are a government. Governments go to war. People pay the price. I don't like that. Taxpayers pay for the killing. To my mind, the elected pricks that we have in power should not be in control of a military. They're bad enough being in charge of the NHS or else the fucking post office. Disaster. The government are terrible at running any kind of business. It's terrible at running any kind of operation. And we don't learn. We don't learn. So until we learn, people will have to pay the price for politicians who decide to go to war. And sometimes living to fight another day is all you can hope for. People don't get that. Certainly not baying mobs of people 2,000 miles away who are upset about a situation, but it doesn't matter how upset they are and how they feel about it. They haven't got any power to stop it. This is what I'm trying to put to you guys. There's no turning the Israelis off. No one can stop them. They'll have to stop themselves. Those hostages the Hamas have taken, in their minds, justify any act, and there's no change in their minds. So when you've got an enemy that's going to kill your civilians. It's going to hurt a lot of people. You should actually pay attention to what they're saying, and if you value the lives of your people, you should surrender. So maybe we took this too far. Maybe, a fanaticism, because it's like, who's God, right? Whose God would greenlight something like October the 7th? Whose God would say that's a righteous outcome? No one's. I talk to the Muslims around here about theology and stuff. Enjoy it. Muslims understand where I'm coming from quite often, because Allah, they understand, watches everything they do. I'm like, yeah, that's what it's like. Yes. God isn't distant. God is everywhere, all at once, all the time. God is closer than you think. They understand that. Muslims I talk to are generally good people, family guys, working people, good people. They understand that. And it's like, those guys who got to mutilating and head chopping on October the 7th, do you think they understood that? Maybe they did. But it's like, God doesn't give a fuck about sides. Everyone's invited. Doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter which side of the border you were born on. And this is why we have such thing as bad blood. And Hamas raised more bad blood in 1 or 2 days than I can recall ever. Worse than 9/11. Worse than 9/11, because let's have it right, a lot of what went on the day of 9/11 was a bit of a happy accident, wasn't it? A happy accident. Or shall I say a grim and devastating accident. But it was, for those who wanted to do the most harm and destruction possible, they hadn't banked on those buildings crashing to the ground. Had they done the calculations? It's like Fred Dibner could have probably told you what might happen. But a fire in one corner that kind of cut a building in half, build a fire in one corner. It'd be a matter of, if you can set the drywall on fire, if you can set the fire retardants on fire so the fire's so hot, yeah, you can bring a building like that to the ground with fire. And you got all these fools like saying, never in history has a steel frame building been brought down by fire. And it's like, yeah. There's not so many buildings in the world like the World Trade Center, though, is there? Where all the weight was on the outside of it. So they didn't have so many pillars inside of it, so it had a revolutionary amount of office space. As long as that outer mesh stayed in place, that building was solid as a rock. There's nothing in the world that had brought it down. But it's like, you cut it open in one place and start a raging fire. As to where there's plenty of things in an office building, like the carpets, that can catch fire. So the jet fuel's not hot enough to burn. And it's like, yeah, but the drywall is hot enough to bend steel. The happy accident of 9/11, which, let's have it right, led to a bloodletting that went all the way around the world. And this is something I fought for at the time. Those who've known me for a long time will understand that I fought in my way for the Muslims in this country who were suddenly on the terror watch list. Tony Blair and the Labour Party, they were the ones who were in power, suddenly almost criminalised and demonised the Muslim population of this country. That's why I ended up being the only political party I've ever been a member of, and that be Respect. And it was The Muslim people of Britain do not deserve to pay a price for what happened on 9/11 because not a single one of them was responsible or accountable for that deed. But saying that, a government decided to demonise them for it. You see what I'm getting at? It's like, I don't need to apologise for what I've said. This is what I know. This is how I understand it. Now, I'm not going to apologise for being honest and trying to make sense of something that's senseless. It's like, by all means, if I'm wrong, analyse this word for word and come up with a better analysis than me. No one can. Could it be said that I care for those people in the Ukraine and in Israel and Palestine? I maybe care about them more than those who are saying, oh, something must be done to stop the Israelis, stop them. And they're like, no. I don't like to me it's just asinine and senseless that, you know, your government has decided that it's okay that you die. Since when's that right? Since when's that fair? But it appears to have been the way of the world for a couple of thousand years. You'd think we'd be smart enough by now to realise that, but hey, appears not. And then as soon as the war drums get banging and people start picking sides, then it gets bigger than the conflict and it spills out into the culture. It's no good business. I hate it. I'm anti-war. I started in my sort of crusade into understanding what the world is as an anti-war activist. And it's like, that's something where I've got a problem with the old Respect Party. They just poo-pooed war and in essence put themselves above it and never really tried to understand the horror. They would turn their nose upon it and say that they basically didn't like me because I understood the ins and outs of war and the cost. Why? Well, I'd seen a guy, a 5-year-old, I'd seen a guy who'd had his face blown off in World War One. Still remember him. I can never be able to get that image out of my head. The guy had his face blown off. Didn't ask for that. Strong likelihood he never wanted to go near a battlefield. It stinks. There's no nice way of talking about it. There's certainly no side to root for. Absolutely not. All you can see is, yeah, this is going to get ugly. This is a lot of bad blood. Good night, everyone.